Hey, all you rad dads out there.
So, welcome to the Rad Dad Show. Tell our audience who we have here. Who are you?
I am John Wright, and maybe you're familiar with NoMeansNo, which was a band that I played with for many years, starting back in about 1979 or 80, and of course then also spawned the Hanson Brothers, and most recently uh, gotten back into playing music with a new band called Dead Bob.
And you're a dad.
And I am a dad. Been a dad for a little while. My oldest son just turned 28, and my youngest son is 24.
Ooh. So you are an experienced Rad Dad.
To some degree, I suppose. My dad duties are, well, they're more the old man that lives up in London.
There we go. Do you consider yourself a Rad Dad?
Uh, I don't know. I think I would. I suppose in a way because like for instance, my father, who unfortunately died rather young, and I didn't really get to know him too much as an adult, really at all. He died when I was 19 years old. So um, I think it's a bit strange though. When I was 19 years old and listening to punk rock music, it really had nothing to do with my parents or their generation. And this was nothing that they would understand or I mean, they were very supportive of music. We made a lot of noise in their basement, my brother and I, and they put up with it. But now it seems my relationship with my kids is, as I mentioned before we got officially started here, I'm listening to a playlist of my younger son playing all sorts of music that I was listening to back in the 80s and whatever. Just the generations are somewhat blurred now, I think, to some degree. And when I was anybody that was 20 or 30 years older than me when I was 19 lived in an ancient age of prehistory. And now that doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, I kind of the experience that I've had with music was I remember going to the mall and my mom taking me to the mall and had money to buy a cassette, and I ended up buying the Sex Pistols, never mind the Bullocks cassette. And she took me home and she's like, "Oh, what cassette did you buy?" And I brought her an old Metallica cassette, and she's like, "You didn't buy that." I was like, "Okay." And I brought down the Sex Pistols cassette, and because I thought I was going to get in trouble with the word like
Yeah,
sex,
right.
and she's like, "Oh, the Sex Pistols, I know them." I'm like, "Oh, really?" But like, yeah, there was lots of music in my house. Like my mom listened to a lot, Bob Marley and stuff like that, but it was never
Oh,
punk.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's a bit blurred that in the fact that I did you introduce your kids to music, like in terms of like did you take them to shows and that sort of thing, or did you kind of
Oh,
experience it
certainly
on
we
them?
listened to a lot of music. Not necessarily. They both saw No Means No when they were young, but we didn't go to too many concerts so much. But played a lot of music, in the car, of course, driving them everywhere that they had to be driven every day for hours upon hours. A lot of CDs getting played, and we listened to stuff they liked, listened to stuff I liked, and we talked a lot about music. And they both, well, mostly the my older son, he took music lessons. He was played viola right to the very end, right to grade 10, and picked up the guitar early. My other son was did some piano, but didn't really stick with it. But he's also a very natural musician. He plays guitar and plays drums, more just for fun. My older one plays a little more seriously. Has actually made a record with a friend and
Sweet.
put it out on Spotify and plays some live music. But um, yeah, we went to a few things, but of course, I was always involved in music, and for me, touring and playing music a lot. When I came home, it was kind of about not being involved in the music world and being involved in, soccer or something.
Yeah. I'm always kind of curious. That's why I kind of went there. I was just curious of how the relationship between musicians, like the parents that are musicians and their kids kind of evolve. Because one of the things that we do with Rad Dads, so it's really, this show is an offshoot of an organization that I run in Edmonton called Rad Dads
Oh, yeah.
Edmonton. And one of the things that we try to do is empower dads to get involved in their community. And we do that various ways. One way we do, and we've tended to do the last couple years, is host kind of all age or ragers, kind of like all age punk shows with bands that and I'm just always kind of curious of how that kind of relationship unfolds, because I found my life was really kind of changed, I would say, by music. Like going to my first punk show at the Bronx in Edmonton when I was like 12 and 13, it really like
Oh,
opened
yeah.
my eyes, and I can imagine or still know that feeling, and I want to kind of introduce that feeling to other kids. And I always wonder though, is like, am I forcing this on my kids, or is it in your case, did you force music on them, or is it just because that was in your house and you never
Uh, well, force is a pretty strong word. Yeah,
I'll
it certainly
rephrase that.
encouraged them, and music. Learning music is not just about learning music. It really helps you develop all sorts of creativity, makes your mind work in a different way, uh, and it's fun. But no, like I say, my younger son really didn't progress that far. He took about 3 years, and he wasn't that interested. So it wasn't like, forcing him to, you have to keep doing this. He was exposed, he had fun for what he did. And then later as a teenager, he started picking it up again and playing on his own. I think the arts are, children are natural artists in a lot of ways. And it, often just drifts away. It's not, overly emphasized in school. It's certainly emphasized when they're very young, but then it seems to be considered not quite so important. But I think that anytime that a child can be creative is a child that's learning. It's something, it's activating their brain in a positive way, I think. And there's a sense of accomplishment that goes along with it. So kids often need some prodding a little bit to move them forward. But no, not forcing. There's no point in forcing anybody to do anything they don't want to do. It's just doesn't make any. What do you want to do? You just keep finding things that maybe they can try and do, and this could go on well into their 30s.
Perfect. What makes a dad a rad dad? Like, what are some traits of a rad dad, do you think?
Rad dad. Well, I think just that, more nurturing, not so controlling. I think traditionally, I certainly grew up in an age where fathers were either not that engaged or were often overly engaged in controlling the destiny of their children. I don't know. It's a bit of a cliche. I think people are people, and there's probably a lot of that still now, and maybe there wasn't as much of it back then as I thought. But I think a rad dad is uh, yeah, somebody who is well, it helps if what your kids do is fun for you too, and you like it. Then you can be more engaged with what they do. Like I never played any video games until my kids played video games, and then I kind of started to like it and have fun. uh Mainly because it was kind of like, playing Halo or something. It was like, wow, this is like a comic book, only you operate the characters in front of you. And uh uh so I was able to find a way of just enjoying what they were enjoying, and whether I was rad because of that or just annoying because I wouldn't leave the room and let them play by themselves. Oh well, they did plenty of that, believe me. But Yeah, just being open to what your kids like to do, I suppose, and then and being honest about enjoying those things as well. But like so many kids, their mother and I split up at some point. Their mother and I aren't together as a couple. But we muddled through, and kids know that they're loved by both their parents, and keeping all that stuff between you and your partner, and not involving your kids with the nasty stuff anyway. Although there wasn't really any nasty stuff with us. It was, but yeah, be a positive figure in their life.
To me, it's that simple. I agree with you.
It's that simple, yeah. And don't be an asshole.
In what ways did fatherhood change you, or did it?
Well, expecting to be a father, actually. All through my 20s, I was involved with music and punk rock right out of during high school, right out of high school, and whatever, partying, having fun, playing music, traveling a bit, and then NoMeansNo became more of a more and more time. My brother and I, and then Andy, of course, at the beginning, and we just started pursuing that more and more. And so throughout my 20s, I was just playing music, and I had one long-term relationship in there. It didn't, it was about 6 years, but music became more and more and more all encompassing, and what I was really focused on. Having kids was not even on the radar at all. But like many people, you get to that 28, 30 years old. I believe most people change around that time. They either become disillusioned with what they're doing and find other things to do, or they become even more focused on what they have, or they look at life a little bit differently. Probably a relationship change. That certainly happened with me. And then I found myself involved with a woman who was like, I want to have kids. And I'm like, okay. So both our children were planned. And I was like, yeah, why not? How would that change me? Well, I think it's like any parent, it's somewhat unsettled when, the small child begins to grow, and you realize how much responsibility you have there, and that they're a person, and then next thing you know, they're two persons, and just all the same, earning a living, having a good place for them to live, and so of course it changed my life quite radically from wandering off and traveling. Although I kept traveling, the band never stopped. Their dad was a dad that was away for a month at a time, not unlike being a sailor, I suppose, is a good analogy to being a touring musician. You're just gone for a while, and then you come back. So it's the sense of how I pursued my music didn't change a lot, and I was quite happy. I mean, domestic life has always been, I'm totally comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with being a domestic animal around the house, right, sweetheart?
Did it change?
And also, when you're playing music and you're in nightclubs for 4 or 5 weeks at a stretch, you come home, you just like being home. And I come off tour, you fly home, say, from Europe, you arrive and you're all jet lagged, and you're awake at 4 a.m. It was perfect. You're bang right back into kid time, and not missing a beat in that respect. So, and the beauty of being a touring musician and not having a job, like a 9-to-5 day job at home. When I was at home, then you're full-time dad, stay-at-home dad.
Focused, yeah.
So that was wonderful. Their mother worked incredibly hard. She worked in the is still, well, she's kind of retiring now, in the film industry here in Vancouver, and she's working 60 hours a week. So it was hard when I was away, having childcare and whatnot, figuring that all out, and a lot her shoulders when I'm away. But the flip side of that, of course, is like I say, when I'm home, then you're there 100% the whole time. So it was kind of nice in that I could be basically a stay-home dad with the kids.
Did you have any fears about coming a dad?
Fears?
Yeah.
No, not really. I do things mostly quite obliviously in my life. It's after the fact, like, oh, okay. No, not fear so much. Like I say, it's I never really expected, certainly in my early adulthood, to become a father or to have a family. But when the time came, it was like, okay, I'm ready to do this. I'll do the best I can.
How old were you when you had your first son?
35, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 30. When did I turn 30? In 1992. I was born in 62, 1992, 30. So 34. My first son was born in 1996.
No. What's the
And that's
most
another change in life too. I kind of subscribe to the 7-year cycle in people's lives. And so that was the start of the next cycle for me.
Yeah. Mine's about 7 or 8 cycle too. I've really noticed that with my career. I'm a school teacher, and so it seems like every 7 or 6, 7, 8 years, I need to change schools or do something kind of different. And yeah, I'm on that.
Yeah, it seems to line up. Your first 7 years, you're kind of you become a kid. At around 7, then you're kind of a kid until 13, 14, and then you hit puberty and you become a teenager. And then you're legally an adult at 18, but I think by 21 you've kind of gone through school. If you went to university, you're just kind of getting out of that. 21, 22, maybe you want to travel. You kind of have your 20s, and then around 28 you start to reevaluate. I find people tend to reevaluate their lives as they close in on 30. For me, 35 was starting a family. 42 was, my marriage breaking up. What happened at 49? I don't know.
I was gonna ask you that. I'm 40, 46, so I'm approaching that,
46.
So,
Yeah,
so I'm curious
something's
what's
gonna
happen. Although I
49. I met
I-
you when I was 49. Oh, there you go. Was it really?
You just turned.
Oh, 51. 51. Yeah, 51. 49 was another bad marriage decision, of which was resolved when I met Wendy.
There we go. Excellent. What's the most rewarding aspects of being a dad?
I guess rewarding when your kids avoid pitfalls. My kids never ended up with bad drug habits, and not that they don't mind partying, and that's fine by me. I did a lot of that when I was a kid as well, but they both have a good head on their shoulders, and I think that their mother and myself did a good job of teaching them, and so they have the confidence in themselves to make good decisions. They found good friends, and I think that's when I grew up too. I think, blessed with the fact that I had a really good group of friends all the time. And yeah, we get in some trouble and have some fun, but it didn't lead into some, down some dark paths. So I feel proud of both my sons, and I think that's when you can have that feeling, you can say, okay, well, for better or for worse, probably did a pretty decent job. Certainly their mother was an amazing mother. And so, yeah, it's a bit of a difficult kind of question. You know, you don't want to just sort of wave your own flag and pat yourself on the back. But rewarding to
Yes, you
see
do.
two
You
young
can.
lives, that are vibrant, intelligent, moving forward in their lives, and facing some struggles and whatnot, like everybody does. But you know, both of them happy, pretty much.
That's great. That's what you want. What's you described a little bit. You touched on it. The relationship with your father is so. What was that like? You said he passed away when you
Um,
were pretty young.
well, like I
Pretty
say, it
young.
was. I regret the fact that my father died of a heart attack when he was 53, and so yeah, I mean, it's 53 is pretty young these days. It was relatively young in his day too, for sure. But as a 19-year-old, just kind of coming out of high school and stuff, it didn't really occur to me just kind of how young he did die. But what occurred to me is that it's a shame that I couldn't get to know my father as an adult. I think we would have got along famously in that respect. But my father was the middle of 9 kids, uh, and he came, he grew up in a different era. Men were brought up differently in those days, but he was a sweetheart. He was strict because he probably felt that that was his job, but not really strict because he didn't really like it. Not from, at least I was fourth of, I was the last one along. I think they got all their parenting done on my older brother and sister, and they're the damaged ones. But no, they went to church until they realized, why do we go to church? They were coming out of that wartime era, and just it's hard for me to know exactly who he was. I had a perfectly fine relationship with my father, but nothing at all like my relationship with my kids. My father was not involved in my life in that way. He was, to some degree, supportive, didn't stand in my way, but parenting now is far more hands-on in a way. And I don't know about other fellows out there, but certainly I was far more engaged with my kids' lives than my father was ever engaged in my life.
Yeah, I'm the same. I have similar stories. Like my father passed away too, and I was actually just finished my 4th year of my undergrad degree, and came home to find out that he passed away. So I haven't known him either. And the reason I think I asked that question, just kind of curious, and I'm curious if how the relationship of your father, well, you in particular, but just in general, influences your parenting style. I guess that's kind of why I'm just kind of curious.
I think
Okay.
I think the fact that my father rarely ever flew off the handle was in my eyes anyway quite a patient man, and I suppose so much stoic. He was in the forces all his life. He was a manager. He was looking after people, and so he was, and from what I know, from what I've been told, he was an excellent manager. Like the people that were under him liked him. He wasn't a real authoritarian figure. He knew how to handle people, and I think that from my perspective, like I say, I didn't know him as well as perhaps my older brother and sisters, but the same thing, that he was pretty even-handed, and yeah, there was no screaming and violence and or anything like that at all. He was just and he liked to drink, he liked to dance. He had a great sense of humor, so there was always lots of jokes in our house. So yeah, I think that more or less pleasant side of him certainly rubbed off on us.
Few more questions. Tell us about your new project. Tell us about Dead Bob and
well, Dead Bob, if people are not aware, is NoMeansNo had a character, Dead Bob, which was a very happy, smiling man who was hanging himself. That was with a shirt on that said "You kill me," and which of course is a play on words, but it was a cover of a EP that we put out in like 1984, I think we put that out, or 85. And when my brother, who was 8 years older than me, he retired, he basically had wanted to throw in the towel back in about 2015. He was pretty much, I don't think I'm going to continue with this. And I moved on and was doing some other music with, I did a record and helped create a band called Compressor Head, which is a robot band from Berlin, which was an amazing project. And all the people I talked to, I let them know that was just an incredible project to work with these robots and the fellas that I met in Berlin. That kind of kept me busy musically, and then ended up getting involved with a coffee shop with a friend of mine who is Colin McRae, who is now playing bass with me. And then we also became a partnership with some other fellas and started a pub. Not started, but took over a pub, and in 2017 here in Powell River. And I've been brewing beer for over 30 years as well as an amateur brewer. And I kind of thought, well, I'm out of music, that I think I should put on the big boy pants and become a professional brewer. I know how to make beer. People like my beer, so let's work towards a brew pub. And that was kind of the plan. Unfortunately, we opened 9 months before COVID, and that kind of put the brakes on everything. And the pub never really recovered. We never had the money to keep moving forward, to start brewing. So it seemed that my aspirations of being a punk rock brewer were not going to happen. And then I started, but COVID gave me time, like it did so many people. Life slowed down, and I got back into listening and working on just a lot of music that I had in various stages of completion, songs, demos, ideas. And I was still engaged with NoMeansNo fans on the NoMeansNo Facebook page. And when I let this news out, it got a really big positive reaction. And was like, okay. And then finally the pub did slide under, and that was last year, the beginning of last year. And then I released this album called Dead Bob. I just thought that would be a good name to resurrect and call myself, as a bit of the of my history with NoMeansNo, and but not wanting to be NoMeansNo 2.0. And the music was original and different. There's still some NoMeans. This is a song with my brothers that made it on the record and whatnot. But I released the album and I was out of a job. So it's like, well, all these people that helped me finish the record, maybe we can get together and be a band again. So if you'd asked me 2 or 3 years ago if I would be doing interviews and going out on tour and being a traveling musician again, I would have laughed. But here I am doing it again. So I've teamed up with my friend Colin McRae, who plays bass, who was, like I say, was a partner in the pub here with me. And he used to play in Pigment Vehicle, a Victoria band that was quite active in the 90s. And he really wanted to get back into music too. So he picked up his bass, which he hadn't played for 25 years. And we started learning the songs. And Byron Slack from The Invasives, another wonderful band from Surrey, I guess, White Rock, Surrey. put out tons of records. Him and his brother and their friend Hans. I don't know why they weren't way more popular than they were. They did pretty good, but yeah, they just didn't catch on, even though their albums were fantastic. Started working with him a little bit with the Robots, and Byron and that band played with our band a lot. And so he's a good friend, and we had already begun collaborating, and he, including with Dead Bob. Ford Peer, who hails from Edmonton. I don't know if you know Ford. I've been playing. Yeah, we met Ford in Edmonton like when he was 16 years old in 1985. And I've been doing lots of music with him over the years in different projects. The Show Business Giants. We did a DOA album together. He was in DOA for a while, and I drummed on one album and played some music for him. Played lots of shows with him. He's helped me with some writing with Dead Bob. So he's on board. And Byron's partner, who I only met recently through Byron, who Christy Lee Audette, she's plays in a band called Wrong, RONG, her own band. And she's multi-instrumentalist, is a great guitar player. She's a great performer, plays keyboards, also plays trumpet. And so she came up and put a little trumpet on the Dead Bob album. And then we just, those are the five of us, said, let's try being a band. And that's kind of how it all got started. We started practicing, and we played some shows last fall in British Columbia that went very well. So say, okay, well, I guess it's a thing. Let's just keep moving forward.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm really looking forward to your show at the Starlights in March.
Yeah.
In Edmonton. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I saw No Means No first time probably about 20 years ago, Polish Hall, and yeah.
Oh,
it's an honor to talk to you and be able to catch you at this Dead Bob show. I'm really excited.
oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it's kind of a lot going on now with Alternative Tentacles re-releasing all the No Means No back catalog, or at least getting started. This conversation that actually started with Alternative Tentacles like 6 years ago. It's been a bit slow going. COVID didn't help and all that as well. But so Wrong is coming out now, and then they're just going to re-release all of the catalog over the next 3 or 4 years. And then Jason Lamb in his book, the No Means No book, from Obscurity, from Obscurity to Oblivion, has done really, really well. I'm doing some other interviews as well, just with Jason about the book. And so it's kind of like a lot of irons are burning all at once here. A bit of a No Means No resurrection, renaissance, and Dead Bob just, it's all kind of coming together at the same time. Not really planned. Wasn't a big plan. Just kind of
It's great. It's great. No, it's good. Give maybe a little plug to the book. Obviously you were involved in terms of like being interviewed by Jason and stuff. Is that kind of
that's about it?
Yeah.
Yep. That was one of 500 interviews.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I'm halfway through the book, and I was like, "Whoa, man! There's a lot of pages of people, and like the way."
Oh yeah, it was. Awesome. It took over his life too. He didn't really realize just how much of a job it turned out to be. It's taken him 4 years. Took 4 years to finally get that thing done. And a lot of Paul Prescott, I think, his editor, did a lot of work, and he had a lot of helpers transcribing. I mean, so many interviews to transcribe. They had 20,000 images sent to them.
Wow.
That they had to go through. Lots got left out. He'll tell you all about it. It was a big job, but he's very proud, and he should be, because he did an awesome job. People are really enjoying it. I haven't read it cover to cover, just kind of bits and pieces, leafing through it. As I like to tell everyone, I kind of know how it ends. So.
How does it make you feel? Like you're, I don't know, like you've had this huge influence on so many people throughout the world, and especially Canada and like the punk rock world, and now there's like this book kind of in a sense memorializing it, kind of your band and your work. Is that something you share with your kids, or do they think that's really cool, or is just
I guess
that's our
they think
dad?
it's
It's
cool.
just
Yeah. It's the band. I think with a lot of kids too, if up with someone who is a celebrity of some description, that whole part of their life is around them all the time. So it's or they see it kind of firsthand. So it's not kind of like out of the blue. Um, but for sure, like I say, Liam sent me this playlist, and he's totally digging all this music. It's kind of weird for me because it's like to me it's like nostalgia, but to him it's like all this cool music that he explores and discovers in his own time and in his own way. So I hope that they are proud of their dad, and I hope that they find it interesting and fun. My older son is an actor, and he plays a little bit on Dead Bob album. He played an acoustic part for me. I had him join, and as an actor too, I had some ideas how you could incorporate a little theater into a punk rock. So maybe one day we'll work some,
a cabaret.
get him up on stage. Yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot of boundaries that can be pushed away in music. The one thing I like about punk rock is that I grew up where pretty much anything goes, and that was really what the spirit was. So I like to make fun of everything that's going on, and I think that there's a lot of room to play with not just the music and the musical style, but also in the performance of that music. Just the fact that Ford Pierre has taken it upon himself to learn how to play trombone with Christy playing trumpet, I couldn't be happier than to have a horn section for Dead Bob. So, and when the horns come in, it just changes everything. So, and actually Snuff, the band Snuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw Snuff early on in the late 80s, early 90s, and then when they threw in the trombone, it was just like, oh my God, it's perfect. I love that shit. I love turning punk rock on its head.
I caught a grindcore band called Null at the Starlight this past week, and so we're talking pretty extreme kind of grindcore death metal like stuff, and they threw a trumpet in one of their songs, and it was like, holy cow, yeah,
like what?
It was just like my brain
what's that
couldn't
sound?
compute. Yeah. So I
know.
appreciate that. Last question, John. Any words of wisdom you'd like to leave for dads or any future dads out there listening?
Oh, words of wisdom. That's another hard one. Well, obviously you should have kids because you want them. But if it's an accident, then you still got to love them. That's the end. You just got to love them.
There we go. We'll end with that. You just got to love them. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's really an honor to meet you and to talk to you. I'm gonna make sure I come say hi at your show.
Oh, great! Yes, please wishes. Thank you so much.